Alright guys, gonna announce the winner for week 2 of my giveaway event. So that's gonna be both the club contest and also guess the best blocking team, okay? Now, before actually talking about the best blocking team, I would just like to say for week 3, the speciality event is now actually gonna be trying to guess receiving time. Originally, I planned and I said, week 3 should be power spy, but because Iwata Yumi's kit is not out yet and I want to give people a bit more time to actually digest of the info, etc. And I have a feeling Iwata Yumi should be power spy. That's kind of why I'm going to move power spy to week 4. So this current week, it'll be trying to guess the speciality of the best receiving team, okay? But anyway, back to the main topic, which is going to be the best blocking team. And I'll show the winners for both this event and also the club contest at the end of the video, okay? So, in terms of blocking playstyle, first of all, normally when you try to build a team, you normally try to start off with the setter, mainly because the setter provides the most amount of buff, and that kind of dictates which direction you want to build the team towards, okay? Now, in terms of the setter with blocking trait, it's going to be either Konkanagawa or it's going to be Sugawara. Sugawara is a bit more of an all-rounder because he actually buffs loads of different stats rather than just focus on blocking, whereas Konkanagawa is actually a lot more bespoke to blocking, so that's kind of why I'm going to start building around him. Sugawara is still going to feature towards the later of my video when I compare other options, but obviously the team will be surrounded with Konkanagawa, and that's kind of why I already have him on the screen as the starting point, okay? Now, if I'm going to play him, it's going to be very obvious who's going to be the next person I'm going to put in. It's going to be Aone because they actually have a bond together, okay? And also he's a very strong mid blocker, so I'm going to put him here. Now, ignore any kind of rotations. I will do another. I will create the team first, and then I'll talk about rotation later on in terms of how to optimize them, okay? Now, this already gives us 2 blocking trait characters, but obviously, to actually have a blocking playstyle, I need at least 2 other characters out of the remaining 4. Now, vast majority block label characters are going to come from your mid blockers, so let's just evaluate the options from mid blockers. Hinata, he doesn't have a blocking label, so I'm going to rule him out right now, at least of time being. Kuro is going to be overshadowed by his SP version, so I'm also going to ignore the UR version. And that leaves just 3 options remaining, which is going to be Suki, Kuro, and also Hirogami. Now, there's also going to be the Wind Spiker Korei, Hoshiyumi as well. But because UR characters have lower stats, and also he is not going to be. I would still talk about him, but once again later on, but more as kind of like a spiker for the team rather than the blocker. So if I just take him out of the equation for the time being as well, what you then realize is that out of the 3 remaining mid blockers, I have to pick 2 out of them, and it's going to be very obvious. It's going to be Suki and also Kuro. The reason you'll be those 2, it's going to be for 2 reasons. One, if you're going to have lots of characters for blocking, what's going to naturally mean is that you have your vast majority of characters are going to be good at front and weak at the back. So having Kuro is going to be very good for you to basically have a good receiving capability at the back. So that's kind of why you definitely want to play him. And then in terms of the other option, you don't have between Suki and also Hirogami. And as good as Hirogami may be, Suki has a deployment bond with Kuro, which is pretty OP as well. And also Hirogami being a UR character is going to have lower stats than Suki. Now, the other reason I'm also going to ignore Hirogami for the time being is that you need some ways of attacking, okay? Yes, you may be winning a lot of points by block kill, which is kind of the block speciality. If I actually swap Suki into Hirogami, what's going to happen is that Konkanagawa doesn't have any attacking move, Kuro doesn't have any attacking move, Ione doesn't have any attacking move, Hirogami doesn't have attacking move. You literally have 4 characters with no attacking move at all. So that's kind of why Hirogami is not going to feature for the time being either. And I'm going to prioritize Suki here instead because of the bond with Kuro, and also he's going to be your first character on this team right now, actually capable of spiking, okay? Now, by spiking, obviously I mean with a spiking skill. Now, before talking about the other 2 remaining slots, I'm going to talk about the liberal position first. Now, the liberal position basically is a choice between Nishinoya and also Komori. Now, vast majority of the time, to be honest, the 2 are very similar in terms of a lot of their stats. Sometimes you normally just decide on the liberal depending on synergy with the rest of the team. But as you can see right now, neither of them have a great synergy. Now, what is actually going to make a slight difference is that Konkanagawa does have a passive ability which requires, which gives extra buff when you reflex that. It's 100 or more. Just so happens both Nishinoya and Komori give reflex stat. However, the way they give reflex stat is slightly different. Konami is able to give flat 15% reflex stat, but only for people at the back, whereas Nishino is able to give 10%, so lower than Komori. However, it's going to be for the whole team. And now if we think about the context of a blocking team, where vast majority of the time you're going to try to win via block kills, it's going to be very obvious. I actually want my reflex that's not on the back row, but actually on the main row. So just straight up from that synergy with Konga and Gawa, I'm going to say Nishinoya is going to be better than Komori for this particular instance as well, okay? So that's basically going to be the decision of my liberal here. And that leaves 2 remaining slots. Now, to be honest, there are actually going to be loads of different variations of how you can finish off this team. To me, the 5 characters I have right now is going to be like a staple and foundation for the blocking style. But in terms of the other 2 slots, I can just think of 4 different variations. Now, the main variation the main way you want to fill in this team is actually going to be considering other offensive actions. And the way you want to do that is going to be quite obvious. Like I said, right now on my team of 4, only one of them is actually going to be capable of spiking, and that is definitely something you want to get out of. Okay, so you need to at least have 1 spike after this. And then in terms of the other position, it's normally going to be quite natural. It's going to be someone who's going to enable your spiker to hit the most, because the vast majority of spikers in this game have a dedicated supporter, a dedicated setter which is able to bring the most out of them. Okay, so what are going to be the different variations? Like I said, I can think of 4 different variations. Variation number 1, which personally I think is going to be the weakest one, is going to be the combination of Hirogami and also Hoshimi. The reason why this is the weakest, in my opinion, is the fact that both of them are UR characters, which naturally means they're just going to have lower stats. And like I said, because even though you have the 2 of them together, which is going to give you an extra block label, so in fact your whole team is going to be having 6 block label characters and have an extra 5% increase in stats when you actually counter the opponent, or extra 10% if you consider both of them being blocking, over the fact that the alternative being only 4 blocking characters. If you have 6 blocking characters versus 4 blocking character, you're going to have 10% extra stats across everything when you actually counter the enemy. Now, the 10% does sound nice, but that's about it, right? You're not able to offer any other debuff, any other supporting ability outside of that, because I don't play another setter, so I don't have actually a dedicated supporter on this team. And then the other problem with this is that Hoshiyumi and also Hirogami both have blocking style, was vast majority of the time, that sounds very, very nice. When you already have a team with 4 people capable of blocking, any extra blockers on your team is unlikely to actually see much action. Because right now, I already have so much choices in terms of determining who should actually be doing the spiking. It's not actually going to be any good idea to add more blockers onto my team. What I need is more offensive capability. And like I said, Hoshiyumi is a bit of a jack of all trades, because he actually compensates some of his spiking power into the fact that he can block and receive. And Hirogami doesn't even have any block spiking options at all. So that's kind of why, even though this can be a good variation on paper because of the dual synergy and the fact that you have 6 blocking characters, you're going to have a very difficult time playing this team with the lack of attacking options. Okay. Because that's kind of why, even though I want to mention this as kind of like as an honorable mention, I'm going to rule out this variation. So what are going to be the other 3 variations that you can go down? The 3 other variation is going to be 1, you'll be playing around with SP Hinata as your spiker, and then you have his dedicated buffer. In this case, it's going to be SP Kenma. Now, the reason why you're going to be going for SP Kenma rather than Kageyama is the fact that SP Kenma have a much better synergy with the rest of the team. Okay, Kageyama, was it's nice, a lot of time he's more offensive focused, whereas Kenma is a lot more defensive focused, which is kind of the play style of your team. On top of that, Kenma is actually able to increase your whole team's reflex stat, which once again is going to help you to reach the condition to actually trigger Kokunogawa's passive ability. So that's kind of why the first variation is going to be SP Hinata plus SP Kenma. What's going to be the second variation? The second variation is going to be with your beach trio, okay? So you'll be using SP Bokuto as a spiker, and then you'll be having SP Akaashi as a dedicated buffer or setter for him, okay? So that's going to be variation number 2. And then variation number 3 is going to be the use of Sugawara, and then on top of that, you're going to be using Kunimi, who has great synergy with Sugawara, and on top of that, Kunimi actually have a deployment bomb with Kokunogawa as well. So you do benefit from a bit of extra synergy here as well, okay? Now, all 3 variations are good with their pros and cons. I will quickly evaluate them, but to be honest, even though I'm going to decide out of the three which one's going to be my the best team in my own opinion, all three are going to be very terrific options. Okay, so if you are going to just be building a team yourself for the future from blocking style, any one of those three variations is going to be a very strong team. Okay. Now, so what are the pros and cons for each one of them? So I'm going to start off with the SP Hinata and SP Kenma combo. The biggest pro is the fact that you're able to increase reflex stat, which is basically means that you're able to trigger Coconut Gower's passive 3 by allowing your teammate to have more than 100 reflex a lot easier, okay? Now, what's going to be the main disadvantage of this is that a lot of time when you actually have this combo of Kenma and also SP Hinata, it's actually going to be very reliant on you actually being able to do a good receive, a critical receipt, so that you are then able to buff up your Hinata's attack with a critical spike. Okay, so that's going to be the biggest thing. However, because you are building a team with so many blockers, your receiving option is going to be somewhat limited. So it's not going to be the most consistency for your SP Hinata to actually pull off his critical spike every single time. So that is potentially one thing, which is a bit of a downfall. The other thing, which is also somewhat annoying, is that SP Kenma and SP Hinata together, they also have very strong debuff ability, which on paper should be very nice. The only problem here is that Suki plus Kuro plus Kogengawa, the three of them together is already capable of doing a lot of debuffs. And if you have watched my damage formula video from yesterday, then you would know that when you have buffs across different components, they'll be multiplying together. And the same thing would also be said with debuffs. However, that's actually a bad thing for debuff, because if you actually think about it, if I have a 20% debuff across two of the same stat, what's going to happen is the two of them will add up together and that become a debuff of 40%. However, if they're actually across two different stats, what's going to happen is that you will end up with one minus 20%, so 80%, times by another 80%, and then all of a sudden you get 64%, so basically a debuff reduction of 36%, which is actually less than addition. So basically, if you actually apply this formula, you would then realize if you're actually applying buffs, what you want to do is you want to spread out your stats across multiple different things. However, if you're applying debuff, it's actually going to be better for you to concentrate everything onto the same stat. So it's actually addition rather than multiplication, which will actually dilute the debuff effect. Okay. And then that's kind of going to be the problem with Kenma. Well, it's not a problem, but it's just a bit of a downside of the fact that you are able to apply lots of debuff. However, they're all across different factors. So the combination of all those debuff together is not actually going to be as strong as you would have done normally. Okay, so that's going to be one particular downside for this. But like I said, it's still going to be one very strong team. Okay, then let's move on to the second variation, which is going to be SP Akaashi plus SP Bokuto. So what's going to be the main strength for this? The main strength is that you are able to provide a lot of morale to your team, which then get turned into passive ability. And what that basically means is that your stats will just get stronger and stronger over time, because as more of your morale get turned into passive buffs, your whole team is going to get stronger and stronger. So that is actually very nice, because essentially you're going to have another way to buff your whole team, and that's across everything. However, this also comes with a bit of a downside, which is the fact that you'll be going into morale activation a lot less, so that could potentially be a downside. And then the other thing is that it can be somewhat tricky to actually plan your attack. And the reason is that when you have SP Bokuto, he can only use his ultimate attack doing team morale awakening. So first of all, because of the fact that you convert all of the other additional morale into your buffs, the vast majority of the time, to be honest, you can only enter team morale awakening twice, which basically means that you can only use his ultimate spot twice. Now that may or may not be enough. But then the other major problem with this is that you have to get SP Akaashi to actually set your SP Bokuto, because SP Bokuto have a huge amount of crit damage built into him. However, he doesn't have any natural crit rate, and the only way to actually get him to crit is pretty much getting your SP Akaashi to actually set to him. However, when you are playing with two setters, so SP Konkangawa and also SP Akaashi together, from what I have seen so far, the setters literally just take turns to set, so that actually requires a lot more planning in terms of when you actually want to do each attack, because you could actually mess it up very easy. You have to plan in a way so that not only you are able to get your SP Bokuto to be set from your SP Akaashi, it also just happens to have to be during a time when you have Team Morale Awakening active. Now you could say I could just keep hold of my Team Morale Awakening, right? But if you keep hold of your Team Morale Awakening, you would also run into a risk where you are not even able to enter your Team Morale Awakening the second time in a match. So that's kind of why it's actually can be somewhat tricky for you to plan all of your attacks. So for this team or this variation of block playstyle team, I think it's a very, very strong team. I personally just think it can be very difficult to play around with it because you kind of need to think at least like 2 steps ahead to know exactly at which point you will actually be doing your spikes, and you have to manage your spike rotation very, very carefully, etc. Okay, so that's going to be my main com for this variation of team. And then that brings me to the third team, which personally I actually think is the best team out of the three, and that is actually going to be this combination of Sugawara plus where is it? Plus Kunimi. Now, like I said, this already is going to bring you loads of additional deployment bomb as a result. You have a deployment bomb between Nishinoya and Sugawara, which is very nice. You also have an additional deployment bomb between Kokunogawa and Kunimi. That's also going to be very nice. It also allow you to actually have a huge amount of buff from the purely from the fact that Sugawara, as soon as he enter the court, he's going able to give massive amount buff to your whole team. Okay, so that's also going to be very nice. On top of that, the other really, really nice thing with Sugawara and also Kunimi is that it's actually going to improve your receiving capability by a great amount as well. Now, both Hinata and SP Bokuto, they have receiving speciality, just like Kunimi. So your spiker, no matter which variation of team I was talking about earlier, they are all capable of receiving. However, what Sugawara is able to bring on top of that is that when you actually do a receive, you are actually able to essentially add up the stats of your other two characters at the back together and add additional receiving stats. And what this actually improves in terms of consistency is that a lot of time you can't actually guarantee who will be the one doing receiving, right? You can choose who out of your team is doing the block, who out of your team do the spy, but you can't really dictate who will be doing the receiving. So having Sugawara in the team to actually buff up your entire team's average receiving stats massively allows you to have a lot more consistency when it comes to receiving. So that to me is something which is a lot more valuable than, for example, the extra additional buff from SP Akaashi or the additional debuff from SP Kenma. Okay, so that's going to be one reason why I really think Sugawara is going to do well here. The other thing is that out of the three variations I talk about, Sugawara is also the only one with a surfing skill out of those three variations. And surfing skill is actually going to be quite important when you combo up with Kokunogawa, because one thing Kokunogawa is kind of all about is actually surf and block. Okay, you start off with a very strong surf skill that actually build up his buff, and then that gives you a stronger block for your whole team. And then as a result, in order for you to actually do that, you want as many characters capable of surfing skill as possible. And in this game, with the rotation you'll be doing, vast majority of the time you want to plan for at least 4 serves. And with the team I have shown right now, what you can see is that there are actually 4 characters with serving. So you have Kokunogawa, Sugawara, Kuro, and also Ione. Okay, so that's going to be another reason why I'm personally going to pick this team over the other 2 variations I just mentioned. Now let me show you the most optimal rotation for this team, which to be honest is probably the most tricky part for this team, which is the fact that you want to design your team rotation in a way so that your owner gets subbed off. Now the reason why you want to sub him out is because he actually have a passive ability which buff up your whole team. So if one person needs to be subbed out on this team, it has to be owner 100%. Okay, so that's kind of why you want to build your rotation around there so that you basically sub him out. Now because he's a mid blocker, so you'll be setting your liberal substitution to mid blocker position, you also have to look at your other mid blocker capabilities to see would they actually be subbed out by mistake. And if we actually take a look at the other 3 mid blocker choices, you then realize Kuro is actually going to be very good at the back, so you definitely want to avoid him to be subbed out. Whereas Suki and Ione, it doesn't matter so much, either one of them can be subbed out. Obviously, ideally you want Ione to be subbed out, so that's kind of why I'm going to start off with Ione at the front, so he has more turns at the back back to be subbed out, okay? Now, how are you going to avoid Kuro being subbed out? It's going to be quite easy. You just have to make sure Kuro is going to be positioned exactly one behind Ione. So by the time of Ione capable of being subbed out, your Kuro, by the time your Kuro is at the back, you're going to ensure Ione is also at the back, and therefore Nishinoya will be subbing out Ione first, because that's kind of the way liberal sub work. When you remove position limit, he's going to sub out the first one of that position which is capable of being subbed out. If there's a tie, it's going to be the one with the lowest receiving stat, which is obviously going to be the case here as well. So therefore, by having this rotation, you're going to ensure whenever Kuro's at back, Ione will definitely be the one which will be subbed out, okay? So you can already know by design those two characters are going to be together. Now, then that leaves the other slots to be discussed. However, we also know Konkonogawa has a passive ability which is going to be activated whenever you use a surfing skill. So now it's going to be very obvious. Your first 4 rotations have to be the full character capable of capable of a surfing skill. So that's going to be Konkonogawa, Sugawara, Ione, and Kuro. Now, which one do you actually want them to start off first? It's going to be very simple. It's going to be Konkonogawa, because Konkonogawa surfing skill is actually able to buff your team for the remainder of the match after he uses his surf. So you definitely want to start off with him. And then the question is that, do I then want Ione and Kuro to be in position 2 and 3, or do I want them to be in position 3 and 4? And the answer is also going to be simple here. You want them to be in position 2 and 3, and that is because you have your Kuro closer to being rotated to the back, and because he has a receiving skill, a much stronger receiving skill than other characters, therefore it's going to be better for him to be in this position rather than this position. And by default, and by logic, what that basically means is you already decided this full position, okay? Kongogawa is going to start off the serve to give a passive buff for the remainder of the batch. Ione is then going to be the next one so that your liberal can be subbing him out. Kuro is then going to be the one afterwards in order to ensure that Ione is going to be the one subbing out in front of Kuro in term priority, and then Sugawara is going to be in this 4th position because he's the 4th character with a surfing skill, okay? And then that just leaves the 2 remaining slots, which is going to be Kunimi and Suki. Now, out of them, Kunimi has a receiving skill, so therefore you want him to be at the back for longer, and that's kind of why you're going to have Suki here and then Kunimi in this position, okay? So that is going to be how you want to design your rotation for this blocking team. Okay, now let me do a quick rundown of all of the submissions. I have already read all of the explanation, etc. beforehand, so thank you very much for everyone who participated. Now I'm just going to do a quick rundown and point out anything which I've noticed. So first up, we have the GOAT, GOM. So obviously, thank you for actually creating the team builder so everyone have access to it. But in terms of this submission, basically you went for a mix and match between kind of the setter and the spiker, not using kind of the best synergy between them. Basically, SP Sugawara and Hinata here, they don't have the greatest synergy between them. You'll be better off using SP Kenma plus Hinata or Kunimi plus Sugawara. I'm guessing you done this because of the Karasuno bond, but if you actually think about Karasuno bond, it gives a quick spike and also power spike buff, whereas your whole team is like 80% more block focus, so the Karasuno bond is not really worth it for a blocking team, okay? Then next up, we have this submission. So basically, you have used Hiragami here. Personally, I feel like you are losing out on quite a bit of a capability by using Hiragami rather than, let's say, another setter with much bigger buffs, because the extra block from Hiragami is not really needed when you already have so many good blockers. So once again, I'll probably swap your Hiragami here to SP Sugawara, especially because SP, you also have this position at the back, right? So SP Sugawara can also increase the receiving capability of your back row, which is kind of why that's also going to be a nicer formation here. Then this one, basically you put 2 SSR character, so obviously it may be a very good team for free to play, but if I'm talking about the best blocking team, then obviously this is not going to make it. The next one, okay, so this one I remember. So basically, you had some problem with the positioning last time when you kind of misunderstood the surfing position. But to be honest, I feel like you may still be misunderstanding a bit, because you have SP Konogawa and also Ione at this 2 spot, which wouldn't be surfing at all. So I think you probably still need to work on your positioning a bit. The other thing I think you also have some misunderstanding is that you start off with Bokuto Surf to activate surf skill, but SP Bokuto doesn't actually have a surfing skill. It's UR version Bokuto which has it. So I think you probably got a bit confused there. Then next up, we have this formation. Let me check. Oh, so this is basically the same as Gong, right? You had that mix and match between Hinata and Sugawara, but I think it's going to be a better idea if you just go for synergy rather than the school bond head. Then we have this one. So basically, you brought in the duo of Komori and Sakusa. Now, while Sakusa does have a strong firepower, because your whole team is more dominated around block, you probably better off with bringing a supporter to increase your block capability. And especially because you already have Kunimi, who's capable of doing spiking. Now, I actually forgot to talk about this earlier, but because Kunimi can actually reset the cooldown of his ultimate attack, he can already take care of quite a lot of spikes in this team, especially if you don't also play Suki with an offensive with a defensive build, which then basically means the cooldown for his quick spike is also shortened as well. So you don't actually need a third spiker on your team. So that's kind of why I don't really think you need Sakusa here. Then for the next one, first of all, I think you actually submitted this twice, so I'll just call it out here. But basically, you brought in Hiragami and Hoshiyumi, which is fine. But the biggest problem with your team is that you're missing SP Kuro, who's literally the best blocker who can actually receive. So you are definitely missing out on a lot from defensive capability when you don't have SP Kuro on your team, okay? So once again, you submitted this twice. The next one, this one. So basically, this one was quite interesting. So basically, you actually mentioned about not playing liberal at all. However, I feel like that's going to be a bit of a mistake because whilst you're right in saying that, for example, if you sub out Ione, you'll be losing the deployment bond, etc. But the thing is, Ione also provides so much buff, which as you point out yourself, that when he's actually been subbed off, he's also able to benefit to your team. And even if you put the two at equal value, I mean, personally, I actually feel like having only been subbed off and after almost like as a seventh man on the field is already very powerful by itself. But even if you value the buff while he's on the field versus off the field to be the same, the fact that your liberal have much better receiving than whatever Iona is capable of doing is already a good enough reason for Iona to be subbed off, even if the supporting value are the same. Okay, so that's kind of why I feel like it's going to be quite crucial for liberal to be in the team, and that's not just for blocking team. It's just going to be a standard rule in my opinion in general. You want someone who's very good at receiving, well, as many people capable of receiving as possible at the back, because you can't control who is going to be the one doing the receive. Okay. So that's kind of why I wouldn't recommend not subbing out liberal at all. The next up, we have this team. So basically, your entire team build is the same, right? This is the Sugawara and Kunimi combo I mentioned. So that is very good. But I feel like you've done quite a few mistakes in terms of your team rotation. So first of all, your Suki and Kunimi should be the other way around because Kunimi have a receiving skill, so he should be in the middle position so that he can be at back for 2 turns rather than 1. Your Konkanagawa and also Sugawara should be the other way around as well because Konkanagawa is able to give a permanent buff when he serves, so it's better for you to get his serve out of the way rather than saving it for the very last rally. Then your position of Kuro and Aone should also be swapped around because like I said, Kuro prefers to stay on the field rather than being subbed out by Liberal. But if you actually choose Liberal to sub out mid blocker, which is what I'm assuming you'll be doing, Ione should be in front of Kuro in order to ensure Kuro stays on the field and Ione is the one being subbed off. Okay, so basically the general idea is good, but you just made a few mistakes and you should just swap quite a few. In fact, it's like 3 pairwise swaps that you should make in terms of your positioning. Okay. Then next up for this team, the biggest problem that you are lacking spiker. So you don't have one spiker on this team. Now you may be thinking for a blocking team, I can get a lot of block kills. Whilst that's true, you also have to bear in mind if you don't have strong blocks, strong spikes, the opponent is also going to get block kills. All right, so you're giving away them points as well. It's not just whether or not you can win points with your spike, it's that you're also giving them free points by the fact that you only have weak spike. So that's definitely something you want to remedy, which is why I wouldn't put Hiragami here or bring another DPS. And in this case, because you have Sugawara, I'll bring in SP Kunimi. Then this one you have 2 SSR, so once again, might work for a free-to-play team, but obviously not going to be the best blocking team. Then next up we have, so this team you done a twist rather than the SP Kenma and Hinata combo, you change that to Kageyama. The problem with this is that I still think Kenma is going to be a much better fit than Kageyama, even though Kageyama also have like 2 deployment bond here. The main reason is that Kageyama's buff literally buff serve, buff set. Actually, no, it doesn't buff set. It buffs serve, it buffs spike, it also buffs receive because of the deployment bond with Hinata. But the only thing it doesn't buff is block, and this is a block speciality team, right? So you're actually missing out by quite a bit. So even though Kageyama is able to provide lots of buffs, it's not actually able to provide the most important buff out of them all. So that's kind of why SP Kenma is going to be better here, because SP Kenma can actually increase reflex to everyone, and therefore that will also benefit blocking. Okay, so then the next one up, we have this one, which once again, because you only have one spiker, you're going to lose a lot of firepower, and you'll be essentially giving away 3 points to your opponents. Then this one, this is the third time you post it, but basically, yeah, you are missing SP Kuro here, which is going to be a core member for your receiving capability on blocking team. Then this one, basically you have Hoshiyumi here, which is interesting, but once again, if you think about what Hoshiyumi is actually able to offer, his block is nowhere near as other block specialists. He does have a power spike, but like I said, you normally only need 2 power spikers. 2 spikers is going to be enough for this team, because you will be racking up some points with your blocks anyway, and Kunimi can already reset his ults like 3 times, so you don't really need a third spiker. And then from receiving capability, yes, Hoshiyumi does have that, but if you actually change this to someone such as SP Sugawara, you are able to increase your receiving no matter what the rotation. Whereas for this one, it's only going to help if Hoshiyumi is actually the one actually end up receiving, okay? But that's kind of why it's not going to be as consistent than, let's say, if you actually play SP Sugawara here. Then this one is basically exactly the same thing. You'll be better off by replacing. Oh, actually, no. You also have SP Bokuto here. This one, you just have way too many spikers, okay? You don't need SP Bokuto, Kunimi, Suki, and also Hoshiyumi all here. This is more defensive blocking team, so you definitely don't need so much firepower here, okay? But yeah, so that's basically all of the submissions, once again, for everyone who participated. But in terms of the winner, I am going to pick Lolio 11 for this week, mainly because you have the team absolutely spot on. So this is exactly the best team I had before, right? The one I showed you guys. Whilst the positioning and the rotation is not perfect, and there are definitely quite a few bits you can optimize, I feel like at least you got the basic idea right in terms of that. At least the first 4 position or the first 4 rotations all have character with the surfing skill. So I think you are definitely on the right track, but there's just a few more things that you can optimize, okay? But anyway, congratulations. I will be reaching out to you to get your server and also ID names in game, etc., so that I can pass on to the devs. And now we have the winner for this week's club contest, and that is going to be Sumari. It was actually a very, very close one. So Long Daddy, you just missed out. It was very, very close. But yeah, congrats, Sumari. You are the winner for this week's club contest giveaway event. I will also be reaching out to you later to get your details to pass on to the devs. But yeah, so that's going to be the winners for week 2. Just once again, a reminder, for week 3, the speciality event is going to be for the receiving team, just so that you guys have a bit more time to think about how SP Iwazu Yumi and SP Okawa is going to influence the power spiking team next week. So this team is going to be receiving team. And also on that note, outside the 4 of those weekly giveaway events, there's also those permanent long ones giveaway events. And I think some of the deadlines might be later this week as well. So if you want to participate in those events, then do check out. I will share the link for the details of all of the giveaway events in the comment section. So do check out if you want to participate in any of those, okay? All right. So once again, congrats to everyone who won, and see you guys next time.